Well, there's a lot of reasons why it may or may not go into medicine, but I know this: it's important that it goes in the human body. And so, for that being said, that's where I began. That's really where I focused on, simply because with what I saw in my wife, I felt almost an obligation to do what I could to help more people understand it. Well, it wasn't soon after that I met a gentleman who at the time was really working with Mr. Castor, and had already known Mr. Castor for a number of years, and to date, probably close to 24 to 5 years or more. And he helped produce materials that we used extensively to try and help people understand the value of what Ace Man was all about and other things. And, so he was really a master at helping us there. In addition to that, over time, he has always, worked closely with Mr. Castor, again, for the last 20 plus years. And just a few years back, I don't know the exact time frame, but actually has a degree in social business. And Steve Burns is well versed not only in our products, but he's actually has a personal relationship with Dr. Santiago Rodriguez, who to date is seen as the world's foremost expert on stabilized aloe vera, who was actually there in the beginning back in 1985 when they actually identified and coined the name Ace Mannin on that original discovery from aloe vera. So Dr. Rodriguez today has the leading technology that he has gifted to this movement. I'll let Steve bring up more about that. But the reality is, we are closely connected. And the reason is, for the most part, Steve will share with you, because of what we do as a social business. So Steve, I know you're on the call with me, and, I could continue to go on and on about, and some of the accolades that I feel for you and your knowledge and how much you've helped all of us. But I'd like you to just kind of take it from here and share a little bit about Aloe Vera, the Hope movement, what we have our hands on and what it means to people, and in particular, also what they can do to help us. Steve, are you with me?
I am, Jeff. Thank you very much. I always appreciate your kind introductions. So as you said, I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we have here at Aloe Vera, who we are, and what we have to offer for everybody that's on this call. And the reality is, every single person, anybody with blood pressure, as my friend Jeff likes to say, can benefit from our products at Aloe Vera. So at Aloe Vera, we do health different. And when we say different, it's not necessarily a bad different. It's actually good different, because our mission, everything that we do is unique. The science behind our products is very, very strong. And what we have here is a public benefit corporation, which those have only been around in Texas since about 2018, that was formed out of a collaboration between two global nonprofits, Man Relief Ministries and Nation Changers, out of South Korea. And both of those organizations wanted to see a company formed that would be specifically for the mission of supporting children in need around the world. So we have a vision statement at Aloe Vera, and our vision is to empower people to enhance their own health, finances, lifestyle, and purpose, while making a real impact in the world. And our mission is to eradicate childhood malnutrition, something both of those organizations were very, very passionate about. Well, we do this through a model called Social Business 3.0. Several years ago, our founder and CEO, Sam Castor, read a book on social entrepreneurship, and he also read a book by David Bornstein called How to Change the World. And he learned of this concept called Social Business 3.0. And when you look at these different models out there, the charity models and things like that, they have really taken a hit. Back in 2008, when the world economy took a nosedive, Man Relief just themselves donations dropped over 60%. And that's critical to a nonprofit. They rely on those donations. So Sam saw this model outlined and said, what if we tied a serving of nutrition to a serving for a child? Well, the company he was working with at that time, when he discovered this, was a publicly traded company. So they were not able to go full out and do a one-for-one donation, because publicly traded companies, the first responsibility is always to the shareholders. And so he started this project and brought me in on this project with him. And we started working on a way to do a one-for-one serving of nutrition for children. And in this book, it was outlined that you would allow people to participate by building teams and teams of teams in this social business to make it grow, to help spread the word, and allow for even greater good than just looking to raise funds. And so we chose healthcare and nutrition because of the problems in the United States with healthcare. And then we really branched out and realized this is a worldwide problem, because even in Australia, for example, 50% of the people, it's estimated, live with some sort of chronic condition. In the US, it's at least that, if not more. And the ironic thing about that is the US is only a small portion of the population. As a matter of fact, we're less than 5% of the world population, yet we consume 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs produced. There's something wrong with that figure, because we are way down the list as far as the countries, developed countries, who have great health. And part of that is because of our diet. Part of that is because of the stress we're under. And I'm going to get more into that in just a little bit. But we are spending more and more money on healthcare all around the world, and we're seeing less and less return on that. The US ranks dead last in the health of their population of the top 17 developed countries in the world. And it's really sad, because we're first in several areas. We're first in heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, chronic or pulmonary disorders, obesity, and disabilities. That is really sad. And yet we're consuming half the pharmaceuticals. That's obviously not the way to go. As a matter of fact, we are on an unsustainable course. And when the president and CEO of Cigna is saying that what we're doing is wrong, you know it must be wrong. He said, we've built a system that largely intervenes medically with pharmaceuticals. Only once people are sick, that's too late. And we're hearing it from the doctors on TV talking about the ongoing pandemic. You have to strengthen your immune system. We have to do something to build up our immune system. Well, our immune system falls off a little bit more each year. And generation after generation, we are seeing a severe decline in our immune system's ability to deal with everything out there. And the incidence of all major diseases could be cut by 80% by just reducing the biggest risk factors to cellular health. And when you look at what are those risk factors, well, here on this graphic, you can see pathogens. These are viruses and bacteria. And it's amazing that we've got this pandemic going on, and then a whole nother strain of Candida is out there, which is a bacterial or fungal infection that our bodies are not readily able to deal with. And it's coming up on the fabrics of the PP&E after it's been sitting out for a while. So this is starting to emerge in various hospitals, and they don't even know how to deal with that. The antibiotics that we've used for decades are no longer working on some of these superbugs. So we have to worry about not just viruses, but bacterium as well. And then we've got toxins. And we understand the dangers of smoking. They put the warning labels right on the packaging, and yet people still do it. And some people say, well, I don't smoke, I vape. Well, you're inhaling all kinds of chemicals when you do that. That's not a safe alternative either. And then there's the medications, the pharmaceuticals. In order for something to be classified as a drug, it must have what's known as an LD50 or lethal dose 50, where it kills 50% of the lab rats or bunnies or whatever they're using to test that on. And so all drugs must be toxic in order to be medications. And sometimes people overdose from these drugs, even taking them when properly prescribed, just because that LD50 is established. It doesn't mean it's for every single individual. We are all slightly different when it comes to our human physiology. And then there's the chemicals found in our foods. You know, a lot of foods have additives that make them have a better mouthfeel, that make them taste a little better, but they're not good for you either. And of course, our poor diet. And I'm not just talking about the foods that have chemicals. I'm talking about we eat a lot of trans fats. We eat a lot of things that aren't healthy for us. And even if you wanted to eat healthy, you have to consume so much of the fruits and vegetables out there because they're no longer putting the nutrients back in the soil. So we have a very, very poor diet in the United States and other places as well. And then you have the stress. We all live under a lot of stress. During the current pandemic, we are seeing stress levels elevate even more. People are isolated, they're not together. And we are meant to be social creatures. We are meant to be together. So that causes stress too. Pretty soon we're overproducing cortisol. And even though that's a vital hormone, when we have too much of it, it actually can be toxic as well. And all of these four factors lead to what you see in the bullseye of the target there: oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, and ultimately immune dysfunction. So we really need to address this problem at the cellular level. And when I break these down, you look at the pathogens and how they invade healthy cells, the viruses, the bacteria. It's estimated that by the year 2050, over 10 million people worldwide every year will die because of superbugs, and the fact that we have no antibiotics that will touch these superbugs. We already know what's going on with the pandemic, and there's others in the wings. They talk about there will be other pandemics to follow this. We're not going to have the gap that we had from the Spanish flu all the way till now, 1918 to 2019, 101 years. We're looking at a much shorter span between pandemics. And I'm not trying to scare you, I'm trying to prepare you. Then you've got oxidative stress. You look at the picture on the screen there of the DNA, the double helix. We have these different free radicals that are in our body. And it's usually something that's missing an electron that comes along and breaks off the strands of the DNA. Well, what happens then? The damaged DNA replicates. And when that starts to happen, you can have all kinds of disorders happening in the body. So we need to address these free radicals as well. Then we've got chronic inflammation, which Time magazine called the secret killer. And we make hormones in our body called prostaglandins that work on acute inflammation. They're good for us to have that short-term inflammation. We bang our knee, it swells up, we make some prostaglandins, the healing process starts, the inflammation goes down. The problem is we have inflammatory substances in our blood that are constantly flipping on the switches of the genes and leaving that inflammation in place. And we are dealing with widespread chronic inflammation in our bodies. And that can cause a whole myriad of problems as well. And when you combine all of these things together, you end up with a dysfunctional immune system. So how do we address that? How do we best tackle this problem? Well, Aloe Vera has come up with a product that is called Celebrate. It is our basic introductory product into our technologies. It's got two of our core technologies in it, along with two other technologies that are proprietary to us here at the Hope Movement. And I'm going to go through those with you now. First is our antioxidant that is known as Original. And this is, again, to help eliminate those free radicals in the body. And it's a type of antioxidant known as a proanthocyanidin. It's not something you want to try to say 5 times fast, but these proanthocyanidins are found in places like pine bark and even in grape seed and grape skin. And they've been around for quite a long time, but we actually were able to secure the most powerful of all of these in the marketplace. And it comes from a specific type of pine grown in New Zealand in a very specific region. So they've tried Maritime pine and French pine, but they do not compare to what we have here. And there is a patented extraction process for this particular group of proanthocyanidins that makes it water soluble and allows our body to maximize the usage of that. And when we take this particular ingredient, it is 20 times more powerful than vitamin C, 50 times more powerful than vitamin E as an antioxidant. And what's interesting is because it is water soluble, it can cross the blood-brain barrier and help protect the brain cells as well, the glio and the neurons. That's so important for brain health because a lot of people are struggling with challenges today, especially when it comes to aging in our aging population. So we need that level of protection. The next ingredient in here, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not done with this one. Here are the charts that compare the original with vitamin C and Maritime pine bark. You see that on the left-hand side of the screen. You see we're about twice as strong as far as the antioxidant activity. And then when you look at how it works against peroxyl radicals, it actually shows that it is about 35% more than even the most potent grapeseed extract that it was tested against. And again, those other extracts are quite often more of a hydrophobic substance rather than a hydrophilic substance. They're more oil-based than water-based, so we don't get quite the same bioavailability. Next, we have our Proline. That is what we have in the product that works on anti-inflammatory response. And there is a patented process that our manufacturer has to separate the sugars out of the beetroot. Because if you go into the health food store and you pick up a canister of beetroot powder and you flip that thing around and look at the label, it'll usually say a serving size is about 10 grams. But then you see the sugars in there are 6 or 7 grams. Well, that's 60 to 70% sugar. Well, that makes sense because all beets are beta vulgaris and all beets are about 60 to 70% sugar, whether they're a sugar beet or a red beet. It still comes out about the same. Well, that's not good because sugar is a highly inflammatory substance. So by having this process, this patented process that breaks the sugar bond and takes the sugar out, where they can just keep the flavonoids and everything that we need from the beet, that is something that we can really benefit from. And this helps support healthy gut bacteria and digestion, as well as brain health. It is highly bioavailable, again, water soluble, very good for you. And it inhibits inflammatory gene expression. So I talked about this substance in our blood. It's called nuclear factor kappa B, or NFKB, if you're interested in the science of that. But that gets into the nuclei of the cell and flips on these long-term inflammation genes. It keeps them on. So by taking this product, you're helping reduce the expression of that. So it's only working on an acute basis, which again is something we want. But what's interesting about this is when they did studies on this, they saw that it reduced the biomarkers of inflammation by 47%. That's amazing. And then it increased the energy or the perceived energy of the subjects by 120%. Well, what do you mean perceived energy? Well, energy is not something you can necessarily quantify with any individual because we are different as far as our physiology. So by asking people how do you feel? Well, I feel like I have more energy, and gauge that. Well, it's about 120%. And part of the reason that they feel that energy is this product works to dilate the blood vessels, and it's got nitrates in there that help dissolve the plaque. And when the blood starts to get into the capillaries, when the blood starts to circulate better and the oxygen is better delivered throughout the body, you're going to naturally have more energy. So it's another great benefit to this product. And although it is an antioxidant, it's a class of antioxidants known as betalains. So they are different than the proanthocyanidins. And it's just another tool in our arsenal. And then, of course, our cornerstone of all of our products, it's in every single thing that we have, is called Aloe Vera Ae. And the AE stands for Ace-Mannan extract. And when Jeff was introducing me, he talked about Dr. Santiago Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez worked for Carrington Laboratories, and he's the one that actually developed the stabilization process for the Ace-Mannan, how to extract that and actually stabilize it so that it's good. Because aloe vera is a labile plant. In other words, the Ace-Mannan molecule is a labile molecule. So when you cut the leaf off that plant, enzymes start to break down and allow that leaf to shrivel up. If you've ever seen an aloe leaf that has just sat out for a while, it starts to dry up. Most of the gel inside, the inner leaf gel, is made up of water. But as those enzymes break down the Ace-Mannan, pretty soon there's none left. It has to be harvested and extracted within about 24 to 72 hours, depending on the conditions that the harvesting is done in. So what happens is they take that gel out, and they have to take out anything that our bodies can't process, the impurities, the anthraquinones. So they used to, when Dr. Rodriguez first came up with this method, use a solvent method. And as a matter of fact, a lot of companies still use that method, where they add ethanol, methanol, propanol to the gel, and it precipitates, and they siphon off best as they can the chemicals, freeze dry the aloe, grind it up into a powder. Well, Dr. Rodriguez started looking at, what can I do to not put these chemicals in, to reduce cost of not spending the money on the chemicals, and B, not leave any traces of them in my finished product. And he came up with a multi-stage filtration process that allows him to get the highest amount of immune modulating fractions of Ace-Mannan, because you measure these fractions of Ace-Mannan in a unit called Daltons. And back in 2005, some Korean scientists published a paper on a study they did in 2004, where they went looking for, what are the immune modulating fractions, which molecular weights from the inner leaf gel, from aloe polysaccharides, actually do the best job to work on the immune system. And they discovered that between 5,000 and 400,000 Daltons, or 5 kilodaltons and 400 kilodaltons, was the range that actually stimulated macrophage activity. And the macrophage is the master cell in the immune system for dealing with foreign invaders, pathogens, and protecting our cells. So when they discovered that and they published that paper, Dr. Rodriguez altered his filtration system, and he had to actually design the filters, because there are a lot of companies that produce aloe vera liquid and they use charcoal filtration, and that degrades the Ace-Mannan. As a matter of fact, most of those products have less than 1% stabilized Ace-Mannan in there. And what he was able to do was he improved upon what Carrington originally had done. And you look at this graph here and you see that less than 1%, that's the majority of the aloe-based products in the marketplace. 4% is what Carrington was able to do. About 4% of the Ace-Mannan were the immune modulating fractions. But here, Dr. Rodriguez has been able to stabilize and have 18% of the product containing the immune modulating fractions of Ace-Mannan. Now, that is the minimum that we have. We are guaranteed a minimum of 18%. Our average batch is somewhere in the low to mid 20s. So we actually are seeing 4.5 times, we're guaranteed 4.5 times what Carrington originally had. But now we're seeing levels that are 5 and even almost 6 times when it comes to the immune modulating fractions. So it's really impressive. And he dedicated that to the Hope Movement. He gave the licensing rights to Mana Relief in order for us to be able to fulfill this mission of our buy one, nourish one model. So it's really cool because we are attracting some of the greatest scientists, and they really want to be a part of eradicating this childhood malnutrition. Then we take those three ingredients that I just went over, the original, the Proline, and the Ace Mannan, the Aloe Vera Ae, and we put it in a base of Manuka honey. Manuka honey is one of the best natural antimicrobial and antibacterial products that you can find. As a matter of fact, as far as honey goes, they found jars of honey in the pyramids from ancient Egypt, thousands of years old, and the honey was still good. It was still edible because bacteria can't grow in it. And it kills bad bacteria. So it's interesting, it does not kill good bacteria. So when you take it, it actually helps the good bacteria in your gut to flourish while destroying or eliminating the bad bacteria. It's also great for sore throats. There's a lot of good things to do with Manuka honey. But all honeys are good, right? I talked about the honey in the pyramids in Egypt. That isn't Manuka honey. However, when you compare Manuka honey with Tupelo honey or even clover honey or things like that, you see, according to these research studies, it's got a 20-fold higher antibacterial effect. That is just amazing. And we use a high quality honey that our manufacturer actually is able to powder that honey. So that helps stabilize the form that we put it in to encapsulate it versus, honey can crystallize. It can get a little harder, but we've got to make sure that we've got it in a form that we could put it into a tablet. And so we were able to use that Manuka and put it into the chewable tablet that we call Celebrate. I always recommend people suck on those tablets rather than chew them, because you could absorb through the mucosal cavities of your mouth and start enjoying the benefits of some of these ingredients right away. And so I've got Celebrate here in the middle of the screen. And if somebody says to me, well, I'm dealing with a serious challenge, if you want to take 2 of those a day and you're very healthy, that's going to be great. If you want to consume 4 or you've got a few other challenges, you might want to actually add more Immune, which is our cornerstone product as far as it's got the most of all of our products when it comes to Aloe Vera Ae. And then we've got our Limitless product, which is great for those betalins, that proline that comes from the beetroot. So a lot of people are dealing with discomfort, and they've been dealing with discomfort for quite a while, and they want to address that. They can actually take more when it comes to the Limitless product or our Proline product. Then in the upper right-hand corner, we've got our Balance, which is endocrine system or hormonal support. I talked about overproducing cortisol. When we do that, we actually are depleting the raw ingredients that we use to make hormones. And I usually liken this to, maybe you're going to get ready for a bake sale and you've got to bake some cakes and some cookies and some brownies and some muffins, but you use up all the flour baking cakes. Now you're trying to make cookies and muffins and brownies with no flour, and you're using baking soda and things like that. They're not going to come out right. Well, when we use up all of our raw ingredients to make cortisol, it doesn't allow our pituitary to make HGH, human growth hormone, or our pancreas may not even be able to make insulin at the right levels. So there are all kinds of things that we need to do as far as supporting our hormones, getting sleep, getting enough rest, drinking enough water, breathing properly, expelling the toxins. But we also need to put ingredients into our body so that we can produce healthy levels and balance our hormones. So that's what Balance does. And then we've got our whole food vitamins, our daily vitamin. And a lot of these vitamins that are in the marketplace, they're synthetics. And if we could keep them in our gut long enough, we could ferment them a little bit ourselves and get some utilization out of them. But anytime we do that, in order to factor in the actual processing of the vitamins and minerals that are rocks and dirt so that we can utilize and absorb them, we have to leach cofactors out of our other tissues, and that starts to actually cause more harm quite often than good. And that's why you can't take rocks and dirt vitamins and minerals or these synthetics. You need to get your vitamins and minerals from food. Well, earlier, wait a minute, Steve, you said we can't get enough from food. Well, we have a process in which we ferment brewer's yeast with vitamin and mineral salts, and it converts it into a food matrix so that our bodies recognize it as food and we're able to utilize them even better. We also added some enzymes and some probiotics to that formula. Those are enterically coated, so they don't break apart inside the capsule and digest all the food-based vitamins and minerals, but they do break apart in your gut and they help with your digestion of the vitamins and minerals and helps you to better utilize and absorb. It's a very, very good product that a lot of people see benefit just simply from taking that. And then, of course, at the bottom right-hand corner, we've got our clean energy and stress relief support. A lot of energy drinks out there, they use all these different artificial stimulants, artificial sweeteners, or a lot of sugar or a lot of corn syrup, things that are not good for us. Well, we use only natural sweeteners, but they're sweeteners that are low glycemic sweeteners, and they actually help give you energy because we also have a proprietary ingredient in this called Elevate TP that increases cellular energy. So all of these things working together are a complete way to support your body and work to support our health at the cellular level. So Jeff, I've gone a little bit long. Sorry about that. I'm going to throw it back to you. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Steve. It's incredible. And I know you had that last slide up there, but we're getting accolades from every place with what we do. And, it's amazing how we have just begun to enlarge our territories. When I share the value of Aloe Vera and what we do as a company, and also what we're doing as a movement, the Hope movement, I want people to really get their mind around that everything that we do for ourselves and the value of these products is doing something much greater.